I'm Roxy Coss, and I'm here to talk about learning tunes. Learning tunes in jazz used to be the bane of my existence, so it's something that I have thought a lot about and how to make it easier. The biggest thing about learning tunes is that you want to listen to the tune you're trying to learn over and over and over. And I'm not talking like 3 times, I'm talking you can't get it out of your head. You wake up and you realize it's been in there the whole time you were sleeping. You're dreaming about this tune. That's the kind of work it takes to get it in your DNA. Now, okay, you've already listened to the tune a million times. Now you can sing it. Now we're ready to go. So before you ever try to put it on your saxophone or your instrument, please do that work first. Okay, so then you take whatever recording you're using, because I want you to use a recording. Whenever you learn a new tune, you want to go back into the archives and figure out who wrote this tune. Do they have a recording of it? Because you want to learn it straight from the source. You don't want to get anything wrong just because you're checking out a version that somebody did a really hip arrangement of 50 years later. So take your recording and you want to be able to sing through the melody. The first thing is the melody, and the melody is what gives us the tune, right? Because you could have the same set of chord changes but different melodies and it's suddenly a different tune. So make sure that you can sing the melody from start to finish from memory. Once you can do that, we're going to try to put it on your instrument. So you can play it on the saxophone. Now, when we start from a melody place first, what that does is it makes sure that the melody is going in your head when you're learning the rest of the parts of the tune as well, which is really important because while you're learning the melody, you're not only learning the melody, you've also learned the form of the tune. Now, what is the form? The form is like the structure, right? So like as humans, we have our form. We have 2 arms, 2 legs, right? That's the form of the tune. In jazz, we have very common form structures of standards. For instance, you might have an AAB tune. You might have an AABA tune. You might have an ABA tune, right? These are things that you might start to see as you learn more and more tunes, that there are patterns of form. This helps us because let's say you're learning an AABA tune. You only have to learn the A section once. Now you've learned 3/4 of the tune. Okay, so we've learned our melody by singing it, and now we know the form. We're also going to learn to play it on the instrument. Once you've played the melody, and you can't mess it up, and I always say when you're practicing, don't play it until you get it right. Play it until you can't get it wrong. Once you've learned the melody that good, you're ready to move on. So please don't move on until you've learned the melody that good. Okay, now we're going to learn a new melody, not a different tune. We are going to learn the roots of the chords. So one of each chord, the root of each chord of this song. And we're going to learn it as a melody. And this is really my biggest tip and trick of learning tunes, is that if you memorize the roots as a melody, you'll never forget it, right? Because we don't forget melodies once we know them, like Happy Birthday. Can never unlearn that tune. You can never forget Happy Birthday. We're going to learn roots as melodies. Melodies stick with us. So let's say you're learning All the Things You Are. You want to start by learning those roots as a melody, not trying to memorize this chord, this chord, this chord, this chord, because the chords move really quickly, and that's too much information for you to get when you're still learning a tune. All right, so we're going to take All the Things You Are, and we're just going to play the roots. All right, there's the first phrase, and that goes back to the idea of form, right? If we're looking at the form, you can start by breaking the tune into little chunks or little phrases, and that can help too. Now, if I were learning this for the first time, I might even stop there and sing through that. Right? And you start to notice patterns. It's moving by fourths. All right, so we start to notice things. Now we go to the next section and we're going to do the same thing. Wow, same pattern, different keys. All right, so now that we've learned that as a melody in our heads, we recognize it as the same melody but shifted. And that really helps you retain the information. Okay, now we go to the bridge. Now, if you've already learned a few tunes, you might start to recognize these as the shape of 2-5-1s. And the more tunes you learn, the more shapes you're going to start to recognize. But again, I just want to ingrain that you're learning these notes as a melody. So you want to sing them over and over and over and over again. All right, then we get to the last phrase. All right, this is going to take a long time, right? It just might sound like random notes to you now if you don't know the tune already. What I want you to do is just seriously take the time to make the roots a melody in your head that you can never forget. Now you might say, okay, get to it, but that is it. And I could even end this video right now because you will have that DNA of the tune in your head. You'll never forget it. The melody plus the roots, you got it. The rest of it fills in on its own once you start to understand harmony better. So if you're not at that place yet, that's okay. What you do next is a bunch of work starting with the chords. We're going to fill in the chord qualities of each of those roots that you learned as a melody. So in the beginning, we have minor chords, we have dominant chords, we have major chords. You'll start to recognize these chord progressions as 2-5-1s in this specific tune, and you can apply this to any tune. So I'm not going to teach you the entire Song of All the Things You Are, because that's not the point of this video. But what I am going to say is start by using your ears, and again, go back to that recording to try to fill in the chord qualities that you're hearing. And please just try to do the hard work of listening and doing it by ear. Once you've filled in the chord qualities, you can start to memorize them and play them through your instrument by arpeggiating through those chords. And if you're a saxophonist like me, that means you're going to play note by note through each chord quality. Once you've done this enough times that you can't get it wrong, you're finally ready to start improvising. I know, we've done so much work up to this point, but it takes a lot of work before you can ever start to improvise, because if you start trying to improvise before this point, you're never going to learn the tune. You're not going to remember it because you're adding all these extra notes in. And again, our brains work by retaining melodies. So now you've got the melody itself, you've got the melody of the roots, and you've got the melody of the chord arpeggios ingrained in there, and the form is never going to leave you. Now you can start analyzing for scales that work over chord progressions and cool chord alterations and substitutions and all the hip stuff that comes later. But first you have to do that work of making it a melody that you won't forget.